So while the United States under President Biden continues to very steadfastly support the Israeli government in essentially everything it's doing in Gaza, and I don't mean just support them rhetorically, I mean the United States is paying for this war. Every year the United States transfers $4 billion to Israel under a deal that President Obama and Vice President Biden negotiated with Prime Minister Netanyahu in 2016, a record-breaking deal for the United States to give Israel $3.8 billion every year for 10 years. It was a $38 billion package. But then every time Israel has a new war, like it does now, the United States separately pays for that as well, which is why the Biden administration requested $14 billion additional in aid to give to Israel. And in addition to that money, the Biden administration has been feeding Israel the weapons. So if some bomb detonates in Gaza or some ordnance is dropped, then people can see it says made in America. It's an American weapon. Everyone in the region knows that even though it's nominally an Israeli war, it's the United States that is funding and paying for it and providing the weapons used to destroy civilian infrastructure and kill huge numbers of people in Gaza. And aside from the morality of that policy and the geostrategic wisdom of it, it's also illegal because the Biden administration is doing this with no approval from Congress. Here is CBS News on December 29th. The Biden administration approves emergency weapon sales to Israel, bypassing Congress. Quote, for the second time this month, the Biden administration is bypassing Congress to approve an emergency weapons sale to Israel as Israel continues to execute its war against Hamas in Gaza under increasing international criticism. The State Department said Friday that Secretary of State Antony Blinken informed Congress that he had made a second emergency determination covering a $147.5 million sale for equipment, including fuses, charges, and primers that is needed to make the 155 millimeter shells that Israel has already purchased function. Blinken made a similar decision on October 9th to approve the sale to Israel of nearly 14,000 rounds of tank ammunition worth more than $106 million. Even some Democratic senators are a little bit upset with this. Here is the Vermont Senator Peter Welch on January 1st. Quote, for the second time in a matter of weeks, the Secretary of State has approved the sale of tens of thousands of rounds of artillery ammunition to Israel by circumventing Congress's right of prior review. This type of heavy ammunition has been used to devastating effect in Gaza, contributing to the death and injury of countless civilians and the displacement of an estimated 2 million people who are facing daily bombardment without access to adequate food, shelter, or medical care. Congress must discuss the merits of supporting the transfer of lethal aid, which has grave implications not only for the millions of civilians trapped in Gaza, who had no part in the horrific slaughter of innocent Israelis on October 7th by Hamas, but also for the United States. There are actually major consequences for the United States in supporting and arming and funding Israel. Major costs. And that's the reason the Constitution requires congressional approval before the United States can get involved in a war, and that's the reason why there are legal schemes requiring congressional approval before the United States can sell lethal weapons to a foreign country as part of a war. And the Biden administration is completely ignoring that law. Now, again, I know it's very hard when people get excited about a war, the way a lot of people have been excited about this war in Israel, to get people to care about legalities. It seems very besides the point. It seems very boring. But even if you're in favor of this war, you should be very concerned that the Biden administration is simply ignoring the law in sending arms to Israel without any involvement by your representatives in Congress, the people you theoretically elected to be your voice in making decisions about peace, war and peace. Just the Biden White House is saying, we don't care. We're going to do this anyway. It's not just that they're doing, but they have also involved the United States in combat in the Red Sea because the Yemenis, the country that the United States worked with the Saudis to bomb for many years under President Obama, has been the Houthis in particular, the militia group in Yemen that was formed to fight against the U.S. puppet regime installed in Yemen that had no popular support and is a very well-trained militia. They have been targeting Israeli ships and other ships passing through the Red Sea that they perceive to have some connection to the destruction of Gaza. And even though the United States is not claiming they're acting in response to attacks on the United States, at least on a couple of occasions, the Biden administration has deployed military force, again, without congressional approval. Now, again, maybe you think it's the right thing to do to get involved in another war with Yemen. Even while the risk of escalation is very great, the Israelis bombed Syria several times in the last several weeks. They seem to have carried out an assassination in Lebanon in a way that Hezbollah has said is a red line violation because it's in Beirut. There was a huge terrorist attack today in Iran that killed over 100 people. The Israelis deny involvement. No one knows who for sure did it yet, but obviously that contributes to the tension in this region. If we're going to have an escalation of this war beyond what the United States is already fueling and funding, you should at least demand that the Biden White House has to go to Congress to do it, and yet they're also refusing to do that. Here from the New York Times, December 31st, U.S. helicopters sink 3 Houthi boats in the Red Sea, the Pentagon says. Quote, Iranian-backed Houthi gunmen from Yemen had fired on American helicopters responding to an attack on a commercial ship, American officials said. The Houthis had launched an attack on the freighter, a Singaporean-flagged container ship, and were attempting to board it. As the ship's security forces tried to hold the attackers at bay, helicopters from the USS Eisenhower Carrier Group arrived to chase them away, and the Houthis opened fire on them. Quote, the American enemy bears the consequences of this crime, they said in a statement, and its military movement to the Red Sea to protect Israeli ships won't prevent the Houthis from, quote, performing their religious, moral, and humanitarian duty in support and aid of those who have been wronged in Palestine and Gaza. The incident now poses a difficult choice for Mr. Biden and his administration. Senior officials said they must decide whether to strike Houthi missile and drone strikes in Yemen, sites in Yemen, or wait to see whether the Houthis back off after the sinking of 3 of their fast boats and the death of their fighters. Now note there, they weren't acting in defense of a U.S. ship. So there's no justification that, well, we use military force immediately in order to protect an American ship or to avenge an attack on American ships. It was a Singapore-flagged ship. And again, the legalities matter. The Constitution assigns to Congress the right to declare war, not the president to just go in, involve the U.S. in a bunch of wars without any debate or approval from Congress. Here is Just Foreign Policy, the foreign policy group that actually does among the best work in insisting on some congressional accountability for every time the executive branch decides to just use the military like it's a toy, like they're playing Risk. Quote, the Singapore-flagged ship is not a U.S., quote, territory or possession. If there's a strong case that the U.S. should participate in hostilities to protect foreign ships, the administration should simply get authorization from Congress, which could help define the mission and avoid mission creep. That is one of the major reasons why you want Congress involved, so that the administration can't just go off with no plan and involve the United States in some new endless war. How many wars are we supposed to be involved in? With that war in Ukraine, I know no one talks about it anymore. It's still ongoing. The Congress has not yet authorized the new $60 billion that the Biden administration has asked for, but that war is still ongoing. The United States is still supplying weapons, so is Europe. You have the war in Israel that I really believe once there's more emotional distance between us and the October 7th attack and the definitive evidence of how much of civilian life and civilian infrastructure has been destroyed, how many people end up dying, not just from bombs and shells, but from disease and starvation. People are going to be very ashamed, not everybody, but a lot of people are going to be very ashamed to have supported this, and they will pretend that they opposed it from the start. But to now involve the United States in still another conflict involving Yemen and the Houthis in the Red Sea that could easily lead to escalation with Iran is at least a complex decision that we ought to be having a public debate over through our elected representatives in Congress. And yet, the Biden administration just doesn't care about the legalities of this war. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.